welcome to the David the Dog Trainer podcast, episode 18.
18 in a row.
That's it. Here we are.
Can you believe it? 18
yes.
weeks in a row.
I do believe.
We have not
Anything
skipped.
we set our mind to, we can do.
Yes.
It's the moral of today's podcast, guys. Set your mind to things, achieve them. Jocko Willink made a funny post yesterday. Hang on.
All right.
It's like 30 or 40 seconds long. It resonates. This has everything to do with today, guys.
Bringing that energy.
So, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. This is something that you hear a lot of. And I get it. I get it because if you're going to do something, you got to believe in what you're doing. That's true. But guess what? Belief by itself doesn't get you anything. You got to impose your will. You got to be disciplined, and you got to make things happen. That's what you got to do. So it's Monday. You want to believe it? Cool. I also recommend you go make things happen. Have a good one, y'all. Go get some.
Damn, I'm pumped now. Jesus.
We made things happen, Josh.
We made things happen.
We believed it initially.
We did.
And then we made it happen. So, little Tuesday morning pep up from Jocko Willink. Make
Thank
things
you.
happen.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, it's a Tuesday today.
Yeah.
Because someone went on a vacation.
That's it. Just got back from Maine, Acadia National Park, did some sweet hiking, drank some real good Maine beer.
Yeah.
Brought a bunch of Maine beer back with us.
Oh, yeah.
Suitcase packed with them. It's like beer wrapped in t-shirt, beer wrapped in t-shirt, beer wrapped in t-shirt. I think we brought back like 10 beers with us or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
So it was good. We had a good time. So we're doing it on a Tuesday today. This is going to be a 2 for week. Well, 2 for week. We're doing it today. We're doing it Thursday. We got some big stuff planned for Thursday. Today's going to be another random podcast, which is all we do anyways, because we don't prepare for things. So we believe it. We make things happen, but we don't prepare for it. So it's fine. Josh, what's new?
Well, I officially am completely 100% self-employed. Pound it.
That's it.
Yeah, Friday was my last day at the part-time job, so now I get to solely focus on all the endeavors that I'm currently doing with my business. So that's a big win, I feel like,
I think
this
that's
year.
big. Yeah.
So, and it's already booked. Right after this, I got to go to Cloak and Dagger. Then next week's going to be. So we get.
So you're nervous?
Yeah, because I get my second vaccine shot on Monday.
I got you.
But then Nuevo rescheduled their shoot, which is that restaurant on the pier by the Rock Hall.
Oh yeah, I forgot they booked with you.
They rescheduled it on that Tuesday and Wednesday because they're having me do photos for their food truck too. So I'm really hoping that, knock on wood, that the vaccine doesn't put me down too hard.
Yeah. Man, it's been so hit or miss. I've seen people that just it literally had zero effect on me, I feel like.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's just a big deal.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah, the first one
we'll
made
see.
me
Fingers
tired.
crossed.
That was it. So I'm hoping that's it.
Nice.
Because I can work through lethargic. I just don't want to be having a fever and trying to take menu photos. But
Yeah. So I'm curious of this. At what point did you tell yourself, I'm ready to quit this part-time job again? You know?
yeah.
What was kind of the mindset of that? How did you shift from feeling like you kind of needed that to, okay, cool, we're going to move away from this?
Time, honestly.
So it was more a time thing than it was a money thing. It was more I need
It
the more
was.
additional time.
Yeah. When I originally took the job, it was, still crazy COVID time, and it was about to be winter time. So, I needed it at the first part, but come February, March, it was just kind of more of a, why not? I might as well stay here. They're good to me, whatever. They were really flexible with my schedule, but then my schedule's just become overloaded with this, and then doing pretty much all of Cloak and Dagger stuff, and then everything else on the side. It's just been my editing. That takes a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours per.
That's like the bulk of the time,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I go there. It's just kind of like a mind-numbing job. No offense to the people that are working there, but
It's a retail job.
yeah, it's a retail job. And all I could think about while I was there was just how I should be editing right now.
Doing other things.
Yeah, and making way more money than what I am right now. So it just felt like such a waste of my time. And honestly, like there were times where I would have three or four edits I have to get done, and I was just wasting, like literally it was just wasting time at the end of it. So now I've just freed up everything. So my schedule now is solely for my editing and my business purposes. So I guess that was the big thing, was it just started crunching everything together. It's like, okay, I can't, this 8 hours per these days, like I can't schedule anybody. That was the other thing too, is scheduling client shoots. I'd have to work around that schedule. So it's like inconveniencing my clients and me if I have to push something back or have to push it a little bit forward,
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I like to be more free for people. So
It's an interesting observation I feel like I made about kind of how you're doing things right now is, I feel like you went through like a couple stages of like, okay, cool. So, you are doing everything initially, right? You are the true, just like freelance, whatever you need, photo, video guy, right? Then you kind of moved into you were an internal media person, right?
yeah.
And now you're transitioning to, I feel like, and I didn't really put this together until just the other day when I started kind of realizing, like, you talk about Cloak and Dagger a lot, and like Aaliyah or the Pompadour, or these types of places where you've done significant amounts of work with them, not just like a one-time freelance gig or this or that.
Yeah.
I feel like you've kind of found the best of both worlds of being almost like the internal go-to media guy for like select places without being trapped into like, I am just this person's media person. You know what I mean? Where you're able to really develop this long-term relationship with them and build their brand and help be a part of that creative vision for them,
Yeah.
while still having the flexibility and the freedom to do that from multiple different places. And I think that's a really cool avenue to be in because, I was thinking about this the other day, like, if I were in your shoes, like how I would look at stuff like this is I feel like I would look at businesses that I really, really believe in and stand by and want to develop that long-term relationship with and help them to create that vision or that brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's exactly kind of what I'm going for. There's a couple of photographers here in Cleveland that I started following in the last couple months or so, and they're food media driven photographers as well. And this one girl, Megan, I think it's Garlinghouse. I think that's how you say her last name. But she does, Hartzer's Dairy, Halser's.
I'm not sure.
Okay, they've like the bougie like unpasteurized milk like that's in like Trader Joe's and all that stuff. But they're like a local dairy around here. They also do like a lot of ice cream. But she kind of has the same approach, but that was how I found her, was through that. But she has like her 4 like select like companies that she like works really, really diligently with. Yeah. And then she has like those smaller ones on the side that she pulls in. And so that's kind of like, I feel like what I've been gearing up towards, you know? And I feel like that is like the way to do it, because it's like, obviously she believes, because like how she talks about these brands, it's just like, she obviously really enjoys and loves them and just love helping them out. And I think it just makes a much more cohesive environment for everybody. Yeah. Like you said.
And I think it helps people see the value in the media work as well. People that may not want to pull the immediate trigger on having, say, an internal person like we do, right? I think having somebody where it's getting towards that's going to care enough about your company to be able to show you that growth. Because here's the thing, we've talked about this numerous times before, the media side of business is not an immediate like ROI. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't see that immediate ROI. It's kind of the long game that you play with it, where you never see exact numbers. You just kind of watch the growth over time. And having somebody that's really going to have the eyes on the company and know what to look for as far as how you need to adjust or grow or create different types of content or whatever it may be, takes a lot of weight off a business owner, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about that before. It's like to do that and then run your business. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like, it's just a lot of time. I mean, when you were doing it solely, like let's talk about those 3 posts a day that you were getting. Yeah, you were getting it done, but it was like you were staying up until freaking 1 a.m. writing these posts and making the engagement for your brand. You know.
Yeah.
So just having someone like that just takes so much load off of you. Yeah. You know. And yeah, I don't know, man. I think you've hit such a sweet spot with like Miracle. Like even when you had me and then you transfer. What's her name?
Paige.
Even when you transitioned to Paige, you've seen that growth, and now especially with like the YouTube videos, that we did back in the day.
Dude, you know, people still talk about it. I don't know if you saw the post that like Tom and Kay made the other day. I reposted it. Just like looking through like the YouTube channel of all the shit that we made. Like it really is kind of like a gold mine of like dog training content.
Dude, we made hundreds of videos.
It's crazy.
Literally, and it's so insane actually, you know, because we were just kind of like, you know, the growth's not like crazy, but now it's like
over time, it's popped.
Yeah, like you said, it that slow like burn is what happens on the social media, especially I feel like YouTube. Yeah,
YouTube is definitely kind of that way
because it feels like okay, we upload it and then it's just like gone, but it's not. It's like there, and it's there forever.
Get stumbled upon.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Do you remember Killian, that big ass Rottweiler? Mm-hmm. You remember that one video we made just introducing the prong collar with him? I think it's the only one we made with him.
Yeah,
that was one I looked at the other day, and it's got like 15,000 views or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it's just like such a random one. You know, like.
See, yeah, that's crazy.
It's just interesting, like when you go through, like, let's take a quick little peek at the Miracle YouTube here right now.
Yeah, I saw you guys posted about it too. Like, there's a nice little post about it.
Yeah, videos, newest, most popular. Yeah. So leash walking step 1 with Killian, 11,000 views. Brandy addressing dog reactivity with a pet corrector from that seminar, 5,000. Teaching the 2 dogs to walk together, 5,000. Highly aggressive foster with Betty. By the way, Betty comes in for a board and train today.
Really?
Today.
Wow.
That's going to make some really awesome videos.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that. Yeah, honestly, a lot of the ones from that seminar. 5,000 with the shelter dog one. Yeah. Too funny. Deli at the vet. 1,500.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
No, but
it's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool because it's just nice to see like it may have taken time, but it's like the fruits of the labor, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean that is just like an unending great resource for anyone that gets training. I mean, if they need any kind of brush-up work, they could literally just go to your YouTube. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did pretty much every single piece of training knowledge is in a video.
Yeah, I'd really like to start getting back on doing more of that kind of stuff. You know, we talked about, obviously I feel like we got the Instagram thing down at this point, you know, or Facebook. Facebook is kind of dying, but
it's I'm sure
it's been pretty good, but we need to get back on the YouTube. I want to do a lot more instructional stuff again and everything, and so we want to move in that direction for sure.
And that's the thing is like you said, you set yourself up for that success already, you know, and I can see where, you know, a lot of business owners could be like, I don't know, because you don't see that immediate like thing. But you did have that vision that you knew how important social media is for a company.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would take advantage of that.
Dude, it's so funny. Like, honestly, like, and this is where, you know, I don't really listen to him as much anymore, but it was all Gary Vee at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's the reason why so many companies started doing that. And he is the absolute reason why we started doing it. You know, you start seeing this guy just posting just unbelievable fucking amounts of content every single day, you know? Yeah. And you start looking at, you know, he's got a team of like 12 people that are just like his personal media people, and then his ones over at his companies and stuff like that.
It's crazy.
Just hacked the game so hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And it's something that as soon as I saw that, I was like, man, I want to start getting into stuff like that. Because here's the thing, like, no matter what industry you're in, you have so much. Like, if you're providing a service, no matter how small or big it is, it's going to be something that people want to see. Hang on. Quick pause. All right, we're back. Who is it that said, Emma, is it a podcast if there's not multiple stops, multiple breaks?
It was.
It's probably true. I do think that virtually every single one has had numerous breaks. It sounded like I think there's people walking on my roof right now. So
There is.
oh well.
It's getting lights installed. We're sorry.
Yeah. So that's what we do here. We do podcasts while there's construction going on outside just to make it real distracting.
Well, supposedly today's the last day.
Today's the last day, so not Thursday. Okay. I don't remember what we were talking about, but we were talking about Gary Vee. He was the reason why I started doing all that stuff. So yeah, it's so important. I can't preach it enough.
Yeah.
So hopefully everybody likes it. So
Do
anything
it for
else
your
new?
business. No, that was it.
Cool. So we got a couple things we're getting into today. I have one question on my phone, potentially two questions. I have, where are we at? 1/2 questions. 2 questions. I have a little topic I would like to discuss
Okay.
per some events that took place yesterday.
Oh.
And then I want to start getting into this book we've talked about getting into for the last 14 podcasts. So let's start with our questions.
Okay.
So make sure we get these all did up. All right. Oh. Okay. This is a really good question. And this is something I feel like a lot of people kind of struggle with here. So the question is from Natalie. Natalie asks, my dog recently completed a board and train. My question is that I'm finding he is so dramatic receiving corrections with the e-collar to the point that if we are in public, I am hesitant to correct as so people don't think I am stabbing him. Do I just need to get over it? He's doing great, just still trying to work through structured walks when my husband and I and the other dogs all walk together. The same goes when people come to the house. He barks at them, and if I correct, he twirls around like I punched him. He's always being dramatic, even on a 7 at times. I feel like I am not being consistent and causing confusion. Thanks. Love the show. This is a good question. Okay, so we get asked this a lot. And basically the moral of this story is dogs that are dramatic about getting corrected, how do we handle that when it comes to the general perception of the public, right? Mm-hmm. Which is something everybody needs to be aware of. Let's first caveat this by saying nobody, like there are dogs out there that will literally act like you're murdering them over anything you do, right? It has nothing to do with the e-collar in this case, right? It has nothing to do with a prong collar. I've seen dogs on a flat leash or a slip collar or anything like that. When they feel tension on their neck, just start screaming and flailing and just making a huge scene, right? So we got to look at 1, what causes this? 2, how do we work through it? And 3, how do we handle it when we're in public, right? So I think as far as the cause of this, when we see a lot of it, has to do with 2 things. 1, the already high arousal state that the dog is already in, right? 2, the general sensitivity the dog may actually have. And 3, to some extent, the dog knowing they can kind of play the owner with some of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you got to look at each one of those things. First and foremost, the arousal, right? We have to be aware of the fact that when our dog is in a high state of arousal, they are going to be much more vocal than they are in a lower state of arousal, right? So as the dog gets amped up, like I'll take Vinny as an example, right? When he gets hyped up because we're going to throw a ball or we're going for a walk or whatever it may be, if you just touch him wrong, he's so on edge and geared up and stuff like that, that energy has to come out somewhere, right? And for some dogs, that's typically in a display of moving really quick or running or jumping or getting zoomies or anything like that. For dogs that are under control that have that arousal, it will come out as vocalization, right? That vocalization has nothing to do with it hurting them. She even said in this post, even at a 4 or a 7 or whatever it was, which is literally lower than a human even perceives, right? It's so unbelievably low. But because it catches the dog off guard, it's like it just kind of, they're like right here, and it's like, you know, it lets out just that little extra bit of energy, right? And it's something that displays itself as if we're killing the dog, right? Sometimes. So how do we work through the high arousal situation? One, we teach them to control that impulse better, right? So as we get further along in the training, and as we get better control of the dog in these scenarios, the arousal level typically will come down a little bit. And yeah, in some of those cases, you got to kind of fight through it. Now, obviously in public, that's different. We're going to get into that in a minute here. There's kind of a couple variables to this, but first we have to understand, obviously, where it's coming from. The second one is dogs that are either extremely hypersensitive in general, right? Or dogs that it's catching them off guard and it's startling them, right? So the hypersensitivity, we do see dogs that are very, very sensitive. They work pretty low, right? The positive about this is if a dog is hypersensitive, that means that we should be able to stop these behaviors much easier, right? So let's take the case of we're out on a walk and the dog is now holding a down stay, right? We put the dog in a down, they get up from it, we tell them no, we correct them, and then we put them back into it, right? If we're saying the dog actually is as sensitive as they're making it seem based on their vocalization and stuff like that, that would mean that they care about that correction a lot, and that would mean that they would alter their behavior very quickly, right? Most dogs that I see are not that, right? Because they'll vocalize and they'll make a big scene, but they still won't maintain their position. Right. Which means they obviously didn't care that much about the correction, which means it's probably the latter reason why they're doing it in the first place, which is the hyperarousal, which again, we talked about addressing that and we'll talk about working through that. Right. The last case is the dogs that sometimes kind of play their owner a little bit. Right. And this one we see quite a bit. And I'll give you a couple examples of it here. Right. The best example of it is I'll see owners time and time again that are, say, doing one-on-one sessions. Right. They come into our facility. The dog is doing okay, but still clearly kind of wound up and pushing boundaries a little bit and stuff like that. And the owner will be correcting them on, let's say, a 20 right out of 100. Let's say 20 out of 100 they're trying to correct them at. And the dog's kind of making a scene every time they correct them and yelping and yipping and this and that and whatever, right? But they're still not getting past that hurdle, right? But they're like, they care about it. Look, they're yelping every time we hit it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go take the dog for a walk, or let's go work on this, or whatever it may be. And immediately I take that remote from them and I'm working the dog and I'm going up on the level. And I wind up at, say, again, let's pull a number out of our ass here, an 80 out of 100, right? And, you know, the dog immediately settles down. They're focused back into position. And the owner's like, look, he's so good with you. I don't understand why he does this with me. And then I'm like, hey, do you want to know what level I'm at right now? Because I don't tell them typically initially. And they're like, what? Oh, I'm at an 80. And they're every time it's like, what? Mind blown. Right? They're like, what? But he's not making any noise. He's responding at a normal way to that level. What's going on there? I believe that a lot of these dogs are somewhat conscious of when they're in that hyped up, aroused state of mind, when they start vocalizing and kind of making a scene and stuff like that, typically mom and dad stop doing whatever it is that they're doing, right? Now, listen, we can't get inside of the dog's head and ask them if that's what they're consciously doing, obviously. But I do think that they understand the cause and effect of things and understand that making a scene or throwing a quote-unquote tantrum typically works in their favor. Right? So what do I encourage those people to do? I typically say if they're used to working the dog at a 20 or 30 and we wind up in the session every single time they come in winding up at a 70 or 80, I tell them, okay, cool. For the next 2 to 3 days, start with your e-collar at that 70 or 80 and just tough through the first 3 or 4 corrections that you need to give the dog and see what happens. And 9 out of 10 times, we find that the dog immediately starts getting better for them. With whatever it is that they're working on, the dog gets significantly more compliant, and they get way less vocal about it.
Dang.
All right, catch my breath for a minute. That's what I see typically with a lot of this kind of stuff. Is those are kind of the reasons why these dogs typically do these things, right? Now, let's say that it's the arousal issue, right, and it's not the like dog kind of playing the owner kind of issue or the hypersensitivity issue, right? What do we do then, right? Because there are definitely going to be dogs out there that are just dramatic about corrections no matter what, right? And particularly this dog she's talking about is a German Shepherd. German Shepherds are notoriously extremely vocal dogs. Another example, Krista's dog, Doof, right? I've literally, forget the e-collar for a second.
Yeah.
I've watched Doof run and play with other dogs and like brush against the wall while he's playing with the dog and then just start screaming like literally like somebody is stabbing him, like she said.
I was literally going to use him as an example earlier. I was like Doof?
Yeah. And nobody's killing him, right? Doof loves life, right? But he also loves to be a huge drama queen about stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, that happens sometimes. So what do we do about dogs like that, right? First and foremost, I always say we need to isolate the specific situations the dog is giving us a hard time in. And we need to work on those things in more controlled settings first, right? So let's use the example that Natalie said, right? She said, trying to work through structured walks when my husband and I and our other dog all walk together, right? That is a situation where what I'm assuming is happening is all of the four of them are going and they're trying to go to some sort of populated area and it's not going well. And they're needing to resort to trying to correct high, but they don't want to do it because he's making a scene and it turns into a mess, right? At some point, you have to address it, right? We have to correct for it. We have to make sure the consequences are motivating enough, and we have to get past the problem. But you can't really do that if you're out in public, and there's all sorts of people around that don't know the context of what you're doing. They don't know that your dog's a drama queen and that you're not killing them, and you're just going to look like somebody that's just abusing your dog.
Abusing your animal.
You know what I mean? Then you wind up on the news because somebody takes some sort of sneaky video of you and it turns into a goddamn mess. Right?
Yep.
So what do we do in that situation? We work on it in quiet, controlled settings, right? Find a quiet park to work on that scenario in and pick something easier to address and get some success with, right? So if he has a problem with your husband and your other dog walking around, go to a park, put him into a downstay, preset your level really high, and have your husband walk the other dog around and just work on that single thing, right? Correct him every time he breaks it, right? And get past that hurdle first before you go to put it into a public type setting.
Yeah.
Right? Then when you go into the public type setting, if you've already done your work and working through it, one of two things will happen. One, the dog will remember and just be pretty good in general.
Yeah.
And if you do need to give a correction, it's only one or two at a high level when you get past the issue fairly quick. Or two, because you've worked through it at a high level so many times in the less public settings, you could work a little bit lower in the public settings, right? And the dog won't be quite as dramatic because the arousal level will be lower at that point, right?
Yeah.
Same deal with people coming into the house. Simulate that one because I think that was an example also of he barks and does this and does that when people come over to the house. One of the first things that I tell people when they're working through issues with guests coming over is you have to perfect it with you and your spouse first, or you and your significant other, whatever,
Yeah.
So, cool. Your husband's out grocery shopping or whatever, right? Before he gets home, hey, I'm going to be home in 5 minutes. Boom. Prepare yourself, level set high, shadow bed, go let him in, high level correction if he breaks it, take him back to it, let him in, and perfect it in that scenario first. Because here's the thing. Typically, we are the biggest distraction for our dog, right? So if we could work through it in that setting, it makes it 9,000 times easier when somebody else comes over, right? So you could work through it in that situation. And then in general, with my dogs, when I am home at my house, not in public, in a private setting, I am 9 times more on top of my dogs over shit than I am when I'm out in public to leverage those opportunities of being able to give big corrections for things so that I don't have to be as hard on them in public so that they're just good.
Yeah.
Right? So if I work twice as high on the e-collar as I typically would when I'm at my house to make sure those consequences are as motivating as possible, then I could work way lower when I'm out in public, and they're going to know that if they don't respond to those lower ones, it still will go up at some point, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about leverage, and it's all about just knowing how to work these scenarios and preparing your dog for them, right? And I find that that's one of the biggest things to do is you got to prepare your dog for these situations and get past them. Now, one last point, just because in the part about having people come over, it was mentioned that the dog will bark and do these other types of things and stuff like that. Also, keep in mind, there are vocal dogs out there, and nothing you do will make that go away.
Yeah.
Right? Vinny's gotten significantly better with it over time. I mean, you saw when he came in today and he was in a down state, like he didn't really make any noise or anything. No. But he used to be the dog that if I would have people come over, I would put him on the bed and he would hold that bed stay. He would have no problem with that. But he would be sitting there chirping or yipping or barking or whatever the whole time he was on that bed just because he was so hyped up and that arousal needed to come out somewhere, right? The biggest thing to keep in mind is you have to look past that and you have to look at what is the expectation in this moment. With guests coming over, it's just holding the bed stay. So you can't be trying to correct for that barking. You can't be trying to correct for all this other stuff. Same deal with out in public. Vinny used to have these perceived notions that when we would go to fields, we would be training for Mondio because that's what we used to do, right? And we would do high arousal training in fields. So he was really bad for a little bit about if we were walking and he saw a big open field, he would start getting jacked up, right? And same deal, barking, yipping, all this, all that. And you can't correct for that. It's a weird state of mind that they're not even super conscious of. So you have to work through it just through the physical things that the dog is doing, right?
Yeah.
So in his case, are you maintaining your heel? Are you maintaining your down? From there, I can't really get mad at you if you're vocalizing, right? So by isolating those corrections you're giving and making sure that they're only for very specific things, you can make it way, way easier on yourself.
Yeah.
So those would be my recommendations, is understanding why the dog is doing it, leveraging all of the situations and preparing the dog for the big scenarios so it's easier. And then the third part would be understanding and learning to look through the vocalization that your dog is making even outside of giving corrections and just focus on the physical things you're asking.
Yeah. Wow. That was a lot of information right there.
Yeah.
I think that was a really good point because people want their dog to be that perfect picture, you know? And so they will correct for that maybe excessive barking.
Yes.
So now you're just really, basically what you're saying is you're kind of confusing the dog at that point, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And that was the big thing, too, what she had said, where she feels like she's not being consistent and causing confusion, which will happen, right?
Yeah.
If you start not correcting because you're scared of the responses your dogs are going to have, you will create more confusion, which is why you need to be strategic about this stuff and understand where you're working through it and how you're working through it.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes it's not appropriate. I tell people that leave our board and train, it's not appropriate to go right from picking your dog up to the most distracting environment like Edgewater or the pet store, things like that, because you're not prepared for it and you're going to cause more confusion by not being prepared for it and not knowing how to work through it, you know?
Yeah.
So that same deal will happen with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you made another great point was the working harder at the home, you know, because I never even thought about that. I mean, yeah, getting it more of that harder, tougher corrections, I guess, at home where you're not in public because, like you said, I mean, there's that like feeling of being embarrassed or anything like that, or worrying about people filming or what they're thinking. So you can have more peace of mind when you're out if you're getting that stuff, the harder corrections done at home.
Yeah, I mean, training starts in the house, right? And the problem is in our house, you know, only 23 hours out of the day, you're not really asking your dog to do things. So when you do find places to work things with your dogs or give them consequences for things in the house, if you get it super under control there in the setting where they're going to be real loosey-goosey and doing whatever they want and stuff, they're going to start to realize, wow, like, you know, even when nobody's around, they're on my case. So I better, you know, keep it together when I go out.
Yeah.
So you got to be aware of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then, so I think this is a good example just because people can go watch these on the Miracle YouTube.
Yeah.
You remember Mochi?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The miracle of Mochi.
Yes, the miracle of Mochi.
Berkelhagen Photography. Check him out.
Yes, but Mochi is one that we did a lot of YouTube videos on. Probably 2 years ago at this point. So what would you say as an analysis for people that can go watch that? What was Mochi's reasoning for being how he was?
Yeah. So first off, he's a Shiba Inu, right? And Shibas notoriously do the quote-unquote Shiba scream, right? Which basically means anytime that they're protesting something, they make this like blood-curdling, disgusting, horrendous noise that until you've witnessed it, you don't think is real, right? It's like one of the most horrible noises in the world.
It was awful.
And it's just protest, right? But it does sound like you're killing him, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're not doing anything to him. And that's the big thing to keep in mind with this is when we start talking about dogs vocalizing and being drama queens and stuff like that, I think a lot of people can get it in their head like we're hurting them, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
90% of the time, that is not the case. 99% of the time, that is not the case, right? They're being dramatic, and it's arousal that's coming out, or it's protest, right?
Yep.
So in Mochi's case, you'll see that we had to look past all of that protest he was doing. We didn't really correct for it a whole lot. We just showed him that the things he was protesting did not work, right? So doing nails, handling him, brushing him, putting a muzzle on, all that kind of stuff. We just had to do it over and over and over again in a private setting. So people didn't think we were killing him until he started to get past that. And then we were able to take him out and about, and it wasn't a big deal. But I know even like we had to be conscious of like I couldn't work him if we had like clients in the building doing lessons and stuff because they would literally think we were murdering a dog. Even though we weren't, right? I cannot emphasize it enough. We didn't do anything to him, right? But that's just what he did, and that's why he came to us. So you got to be aware of that kind of stuff. You got to be strategic about it as you're working through it. But that's a very good example. Yeah, check out the Miracle of Mochi. It's a video on our YouTube channel. You could see all about that.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so hope that answers your question, Natalie. Okay, so moving into our next topic here, of our random podcast here. My incident at Platform Brewing Company yesterday. Not even a specific incident, but just some annoying shit I want to talk about and I want to break down for some people.
Man, straight back from vacation and then
just annoying stuff all the time. Okay, so obviously I was out of town. And, when I go out of town, I leave my dogs at the shop.
Yep.
And yesterday I had to take them all home, obviously. And I took the girls home earlier in the day, and I had Vinny at the facility, and I needed to take him home. So every Monday night, I go and I do trivia Platform, right? Platform Brewery. And, I always I never really take my dogs with me there or anything, but I know it's very dog friendly, and there's never typically a ton of dogs there, right?
Yeah.
So whatever, I'm like, all right, well, I got to take them. I was coming right out of a lesson at 8. Platforms trivia was at like 8:15. So I just was like, all right, I'll take them there with me, right? So we get there. I go inside. And as soon as I get inside, there's this guy. He's got this dog, whatever, at the bar. And I'm coming around the corner. His dog sees Vinny and just like full on tries to like lunge towards him, right? Whatever. I kind of move out of the way. No big deal.
Yeah.
So I go around, get to the table. I put Vinny in a downstay in the back corner, which we'll talk about this in a minute. I always keep my dogs very off to the side, and I position myself in a place where I could see what's going on around me so I don't get caught off guard by anything.
Yeah.
Whatever. So got Vinny in a downstay. Vinny is phenomenal in public. He's honestly, I always say, like, probably my best dog in public. Like, when since I've had him at like 5 months old, I used to take that dog everywhere with me. So whatever. Yeah. He's at a downstay, and this dog that just finished lunging at him is maybe 10 feet away, 15 feet away at the bar. And the dog is just like, whatever, kind of freaking out, whining, barking, trying to pull. This guy's holding the short leash. And the guy, like, gets up and looks at me. He's like, can she just come say hi? And I just look at him. I'm like, no. She can't just come say hi.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and like, he sounded, like, so annoyed by it when he said it of, like, oh, my. Because he could tell, like, when his dog lunged, and I kind of, like, jumped out of the way with Vinny and kind of gave him a look, like, keep your dog over there, please. Like, I think he was just, like, so irritated that he couldn't let his dog come say hi to Vinny, right?
Yeah.
To get him to settle down. Like, that was his only way of getting his dog to settle down. And mind you, this guy, I see at Platform, like, every single week that I'm there with this dog. And this dog is always just pulling them all over the bar. It's all over the place. It's got to go say hi to every single dog it sees. It's really pushy and annoying. It starts barking all the time in the middle of trivia and stuff. whatever. So I tell him no, and he's just, whatever. He turns around, sits back at the bar, and then, he had to like go outside a couple times with the dog because the dog started like freaking out and stuff like that. And whatever. So that's annoying thing number one. Which that one it was annoying, but whatever. I could deal with that. Like Vinny wasn't fazed by it. He didn't care, right? The guy kept his dog away from him. I don't care what, whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. This was the annoying part.
Ooh.
Probably 5 different people over the course of the 2 hours that I was there literally just tried to go up to him and start petting him. They didn't even like acknowledge me. They just go up and they're like this one girl, she's like behind me. Vinny's next to me in a downstay. She's behind me, and I see her out of the corner of my eye, and she's like 5 feet away, and she does this one. I'll show you this one. You ready?
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh no.
Hi, puppy. So she does that one, right? And then I see she just then starts walking over in that same position of like bent over 90 degrees, face first, straight towards a dog you don't know, not asking if you could pet him at all, and just going for it, right? Another situation, right? One of the I don't know if he was a bar back or something, but he comes over and he just looks at me and he's like, "Can I give your dog a treat?" And I was just like, "No." Sorry, he's training right now. And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool. Glad I asked. And then he comes over like 10 minutes later and he's asking me questions about him. He's like, "Oh, what kind of dog is that?" Blah, blah. I was like, "Oh, he's a Malinois. How old is he?" He's like 7, whatever. And then he goes and bends down and just goes to pet him. And I was like, "Dude, I just told you 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
He's training right now. You can't give him a treat. You can't pet him. Don't leave him alone." Right?
Yeah.
And moral of this story here right now is don't pet dogs that are not yours when you're out in public. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
There's no need for it. And if you're going to do so, ask the owner first.
Yes,
I don't
please.
understand why that is such a hard concept for people to grasp. I feel like I grew up and my parents taught me at a very young age, if you want to pet the dog, you have to ask the owner first. And on top of that, you don't really need to pet every dog that you see.
You don't.
Right? And unfortunately, we live in this society right now where everybody feels like dogs are out for their own enjoyment. Mm-hmm. Right? They get offended when you tell them that you can't pet them. They get offended when their dogs can't meet each other. And they take them out as this accessory. Right? And that's what pisses me off the most about this is dogs are people's accessory now. Of you go to the bar and you have your dog and it's like, look, I'm the guy with the dog, right? I'm the social guy that wants to have everybody come up to me, as opposed to like in Vinny's case, like he was literally laying on the floor in the corner sleeping. Mm-hmm. Seriously, like he was like curled up and he was sleeping when all of this stuff was going on. It's like you can't look at him and just be like, he's minding his own business. He's snoozing right now. He's hanging out. He's not here to interact with anybody right now.
Yeah.
Right? I don't understand it. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just funny because that guy that's at the bar all the time is literally the guy you just like explained who he is.
Yes. This is my dog. Look at my dog.
Yeah. And then the bar back guy, he did so good at the beginning. He asked you about the treat and everything.
I appreciated that. And then he just goes for it. You go for it. 10 minutes later. No, don't do that. Stop.
No, I just told you no.
Yeah. I don't understand. And then so my buddy was there, right? And my buddy Matt just got a corgi puppy. Super cute little dog. It's like 12 weeks old right now.
Oh, geez.
Right? And he started asking me because this is the first time he had seen me bring my dogs to a public setting. And he's met all of my dogs. He's come to my house before plenty of times.
Yeah.
He's he's interacted with all of them and stuff like that. And he started asking. He's like, and he wants to do training with the dog once the dog gets a little bit older and stuff like that. And he's like, so I've met your dogs at your house and stuff like that. So why, what's the reasoning for you not allowing people to pet them out in public and stuff like that? So I think it's a good opportunity to re-break down the reasons why I'm very strict about these kinds of things, right?
Boom.
So the biggest reasons why I do not let people or dogs interact with my dogs while I'm out in public is, one, you just don't have to, obviously. There's no reason why people need to be coming up to your dogs and petting them. But from a behavioral standpoint, it goes one of two ways, right? So first off, we need to break down the fact that on the leash is one of the most restrictive places that a dog can be, right? When they are on a leash, they typically feel some degree of frustration at all times because they know that they're restrained within the confines of X amount of space, right?
Yeah.
That's why we see dogs that are typically more aggressive with other dogs on the leash. That's why we see dogs get reactive on the leash towards other things. That's why they pull. That's why they do all these things, because they don't understand that barrier, right?
Yeah.
So you can have dogs that are either really, really excited to see people and get really, really happy, or are really, really scared of people and get really, really nervous around them, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to get a different response with either or if you do on-leash greetings, right? Let's take the happy-go-lucky golden retriever or this guy's dog, right? This coon hound or whatever it is, who clearly is social, clearly likes people, clearly likes dogs, right? When this guy comes to this place with this dog, because the dog is so social and because he makes it an event for everybody to come up and pet this dog or interact with this dog, or this dog to see all the other dogs and stuff like that around, he has no control over the dog, right? He is conditioned in all of this arousal that when you see this dog or you see this person, you better get super jacked up because you're going to get to go say hi, right? And you teach the dog unintentionally that all of this is yours. It's yours for the taking, right? That's why this dog felt inclined to lunge at Vinny as soon as that dog saw him. That's why that dog, when he couldn't come and say hi to Vinny, started freaking out and barking and whining and pulling on the leash and stuff like that. Is because in that dog's mind, everything is his, right? So you create all this conditioned arousal, making it 10 times more difficult to control the dog, even for a trained dog. Even if your dog has training and you're using proper training tools and consequences and corrections and stuff like that, if you're doing that all the time, just like the example I used a couple minutes ago of Vinny getting hyped up when he gets near the field, you create arousal with a specific trigger, right?
Yeah.
Now let's take the fearful example, right? If you are always having people come up to your dog that's nervous of people, or always having dogs invade your dog's space when they're nervous of other dogs, you create this conditioned sense of fear, which one, makes the problem worse, and two, puts the dog in a position every single time of fight or flight. And since flight is not an option because they're restrained on a leash, it turns into fight, and they start learning growling, snapping, barking, lunging keeps other dogs away. So you create dog reactivity. That's the number one cause of it that I see, is too much of that type of socialization in settings where the dog is stressed out. So I told my buddy, I was like, the reason why you could say hi to all my dogs at the house is because I know if they're loose and they're free and they come up to you and they no longer want to be pet, they can go away, right? I know that because they're not in a command, if they come up to you and they get all excited when you're petting them, I'm not taking away from something that I'm trying to get them to do, like be calm in public or walk politely on a leash or stay in their downstay or anything like that, right? So the conditioned excitement or fear is the number one reason why I don't do that, right? When I look at going out in public with my dogs, right, as a privilege, right? It is a privilege for us to be able to take our dogs to all of these different places.
Yeah.
Right? Sure. Breweries. The fact that I can go to Platform Brewery for 2.5 hours with my dog is so cool.
It is.
Right? You couldn't do that 5 years ago. I think it was just 3 years ago or so that they passed the bill legally allowing dogs on patios. People were doing it before, obviously, but I think Ohio actually passed a bill saying you now can do this everywhere. Right?
Yeah.
Businesses have the right to be able to offer that as a service for people, right? And I think the fact that you could do that and the fact that we can go so many places and we live in such a pet-friendly society is such a privilege. And unfortunately, in people's minds, it's turned into a right that they can take their dog everywhere.
Yeah.
And because they look at it that way, they don't look at how do I do this responsibly? Right? How do I do this in a way where everybody can enjoy this privilege as opposed to I'm just entitled to take my dog to any of these places? Right?
Yeah.
I think that creates a lot of problems. And that's why we see so many issues with off-leash dogs at the park running up to whatever dog they see and this and that. I think that is a privilege for people to be able to take their dogs into those settings that may not be the most social dogs, but can now get out and about and go and experience the world more so they can improve on that socialization. And because all these Joe Schmoes think that just give it to their dog where it's all yours for the taking, it creates problems, and it always falls back on the people that are trying to be the responsible dog owner, right, as the issue. And that's my biggest issue with it, right? And that's the biggest reason why I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Because I look at it that way, I always want to make sure that because it's a privilege, and I keep saying this, because it's a privilege for me to be able to take my dog in those places, my dog is not being disruptive towards anybody else, right? I'm going to take them out and about, and I'm going to keep them under control, and I'm going to make sure they're not being a nuisance, and I want them to be that model dog that people look at and be like, wow, I wish my dog can do that. Wow, I wish my dog was that calm in this setting, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not restricting them from all of these beautiful things and them getting to say hi to all these people. They're social. They have plenty of social outlets with dogs and people.
Yeah.
But it's not that place, right? Because it creates problems.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to start looking at things a little bit more that way and start being significantly more responsible with our dogs and being significantly more respectful towards people out there that are trying to just kind of mind their own business with their dogs. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
It's so frustrating. Like,
yeah.
You know, like, and then times I go out without my dogs, and then you go into a bar and you just have other people's dogs just coming up to you and stuff like that. Like, so now you start getting into, cool, if your dog just goes up to every single person they see, what are people that have dog allergies now no longer allowed to go to these places? You know what I mean? You start taking away from the original intention of these places, which is people can go there.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And instead it turns into just a freaking dog park. You know, it creates problems.
Yeah. Which I just don't understand. How can you not feel guilty or embarrassed that your dog is doing these things? I don't know. Like, I guess it's just what you said, that it's an accessory. They don't perceive it that it's bothering anybody.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure they've
become
been told.
the norm.
Yeah.
You know, it's and how many people, how many times do you think those people have actually been told no for those types of things?
Not enough, probably.
Probably almost none.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of awkward. You know, I tell people this all the time that need to tell people no when they ask to pet their dogs because they have dogs with aggression issues or this or that. I was like, you know, it's a skill you need to develop because it's awkward at first, right? I mean, I've literally had people, luckily at this point, like I feel like I say it in such a way where it's like, this is not going to be a conversation right now.
Yeah.
You know, but like I've had people in the past when I told them they couldn't pet my dogs or couldn't let their dog up to my dog or whatever it was, like literally start yelling at me before over it.
Yeah.
You know, and like call me mean names and stuff like that.
They make you feel like you're at fault. Like it's your problem. Like, no. Well, and what, when the girls were on Emma and Margot, right? Margot. Oh God, I'm sorry.
Margot.
So sorry. It's his fault.
It is my fault.
You know, when they said they were on that walk, you know, and they knew they should have told that.
Oh,
like,
sure.
That dog that came up, like
it's awkward.
Yeah, but then they felt really bad because they put their dog in that situation or whatever. But I mean, there is that huge like social barrier feeling because you're like, are these people? How are they going to react for me telling their dog can't see my dog?
Yeah,
you know.
And this is why I typically speaking choose to not take my dog to a lot of these different places. You know, like I know the high traffic dog places around, you know, like there's the places that just no matter what, if I go there, there's so many people that do those types of things that it's like, I'm the bad guy if I go there and start trying to set some boundaries and stuff. So I typically just avoid them, right? Same with, you know, if it's a really busy day or something, like I'm not going to go to platform on a Saturday night or something where everybody's shoulder to shoulder and there's no space or anything like that. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Edgewater Live. People like taking their dogs to that when it's going on at Edgewater, which is like their big thing and stuff like that. But a Monday night when there's plenty of space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
No.
And, you know, I do feel bad for my clients because so many of them want to go out and be able to do those types of things. And this is something I was telling my friend Matt is like, I know how it creates problems, right? As a trainer, we're in this innate position where we've seen the big behavioral issues and we've seen what leads to them, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, The false narrative that's been pushed is that doing all of those types of things with your dogs and taking them all these places and socializing them with every dog and person that you see is what they need in order to be a well-balanced, socialized dog. And people look at that as like the staple of, I want to be able to do this with my dog, right? I want to be able to go to the dog parks and go to the breweries and meet people out on the walk and be social. Because here's the thing, a lot of people get a dog to enhance their social life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They want to be 100%. A part of that dog ownership circle, you know? Mm-hmm. And I always remind them, all those 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old dogs that you see out there that people are doing all of those types of things with are just one bad experience away from it all going downhill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely.
It's one bad thing happens and somebody pets your dog wrong, or that lady that did that face thing, right, gets bit in the nose or whatever it may be, one bad experience away from everything going downhill from there, right?
Yeah.
And then, listen, you know, from a petting standpoint, like going up to people and asking to pet their dogs, if you go, listen, I don't recommend doing it. Again, I tell people you don't need to pet other dogs that are not yours, right? Or that you do not know and trust. But if you're going to go pet somebody else's dog, don't fucking do it face first.
Yeah.
Why would you? Don't do it face first, right?
The most dangerous part of the dog.
It's just ridiculous. I see people like stick their face like 3 inches away from dogs' faces all the time. And just like every time I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Especially all these people that like, you know, what if you just went out and you adopted a shelter dog, right? And you don't know the dog yet. And 2 days later, you go to take it to a bar and somebody goes to do that. And you don't know that the dog actually has aggression issues. And that person gets tagged in the face. Game over.
Game over. That dog's
dead dog.
Yeah.
Right? Because of everybody honestly involved. Not necessarily just the dog, but it's just a bad idea. Yeah. So understand that these public settings you take your dogs to are a privilege. Be responsible and be respectful of everybody else around them, and make sure at all times your dog is not being a nuisance. That's it. If you look at it from the light of, is my dog bothering other people right now? Or is my dog potentially going to bother somebody by me doing A, B, C, or D? Don't take them. Or make sure you teach them something that is going to make sure that they're not being that way.
Mm-hmm. And you know your dog better than other people, so if you know that it's going to be like that, don't do it.
Don't do it. So,
just don't do it.
I don't know. That's random topic number 2.
I like it. Well, that's a good one to talk about, especially because our weather's getting better.
It's patio season, guys.
Oh, patio season's
People
coming.
are going to be getting out there with their dogs. All right, sweet. So, next here. Let's get into some book stuff.
The Good Dog.
All right. So, what episode was it that we started talking about this in? 4, maybe 5.
4 or 5,
I think somewhere around there. So 4 or 5, we started breaking into this book, The Good Dog Way. Love Them by Leading Them by Sean O'Shea, trainer out in Los Angeles. A good book. We started getting into this after the Caesar's Way segment. Sean has worked with Caesar numerous times before. Sean breaks down a lot of the Caesar concepts in a way for owners that I think is pretty good and digestible. So I want to read some passages from this. This book has honestly been preached by a lot of dog trainers out there as this phenomenal handbook for owners. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people use this book to supplement in with training programs just to help people, I think, understand themselves and understand dogs a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know? So we started reading some passages. It's broken up into blog posts, right? This literally was, I believe, a collection of a bunch of blog posts that he had written over the years that he kind of just sandwiched up into a book. So it gets a little redundant after a while as you're reading through it because it's very much in that context and we're not telling a story. It's just like bite-sized information, bite-sized information, bite-sized information, right? So we're going to read a couple of them in here, see if anything sparks anything, talk about them. Josh, if you hear anything you like, stop me and let's chat about it. So,
will do.
All right, this one's called Real Talk. Dogs are smart. They know what works and what doesn't. Have you ever seen a dog try... Oh, we read this one already. Dig the hole in the cement. Wait, we read this one already. Man. All right, here we go. All right. That's where we left off. All right. Resistance is not futile. The bratty dog who successfully resists offers more brattiness in the future. The nervous dog who successfully resists offers more nervousness in the future. The aggressive dog who successfully resists offers more aggression in the future. The fearful dog who successfully resists offers more fear in the future. This successful resistance reinforces that these choices, regardless of how unhealthy, work. They get the dog what it wants in that moment as quickly as possible, and that success leads to more and more of whatever the dog might be doing. The patterns become deeper, the habits stronger, and eventually what started out as momentary choices and behaviors start to become the dog's personality, their way of being. But if we block these choices and prevent unhealthy resistance, we open the door to leading our dogs towards a more happy and healthy life. If you want to build muscle, you have to sweat it out in the gym. If you want to gain knowledge, well, that's the first passage. The resistance. See, this is what I mean. Bite-sized passages. All right. So this is a good one. This goes into the conversation we were having earlier about shadow and mochi and resistance working and it being self-reinforcing. So we talk about self-reinforcing behaviors a lot. Self-reinforcing behaviors are basically any sort of behavior the dog does that achieves a reinforcing response alone, just by doing it, right? Yeah. Barking out the window at the neighbor and the neighbor continuing to walk down the street. That reinforces that barking at them makes them go away. Getting fearful and growling at somebody and then that person going away. The fearful response working. What else we got? The bratty dog, right? I don't really like the term bratty when we're talking about dogs a whole lot, but I'll say sassy dog, right? That gives you some attitude when you correct them or something, like Shadow does out in public, and us stopping the corrections. Again, that works. Aggressive dogs showing aggressive displays, fearful dogs learning that they could run away from things and it working, whatever. Any number of things, right? Resistance, or let me clarify here, any response the dog has to a behavior that achieves the desired response, we have to look in and we need to see which one of these are the quote-unquote unhealthy ones and how do I go about blocking those patterns, right? I always say the brattiness or the nervousness or the aggression or the fear or this or that or the state of mind that the dog is in is not necessarily the problem. It's the dog's response or what they do in that state of mind, right? And that's what he's getting at here, right? Is the dog's response to all of these initial states of mind is the issue. So we have to go in, we got to look at that response, and we got to block it, right? All right, next one. What's hard is good. If you want to build muscle, you have to sweat it out at the gym. If you want to gain knowledge, you have to do the hard work of studying and focusing. If you want to succeed at your job or craft, you have to put in massive hours and push yourself past your comfort zone. If you want to resolve emotional pain, you have to be willing to wade into the dark waters of therapy. All this stuff is hard, challenging, and uncomfortable, but it's precisely what allows us to come out better on the other side. It's the same with your dog. If you want her to be her best, you can't just do the easy stuff. You have to look for the weak spots and problem areas. Are there fears? Go after them. Are there distractions that overwhelm? Go after them. Are there certain behaviors that just seem like they won't stop? Go after them. The weak spots should always be your focus points. The problem areas point you in the direction that needs attention. It's the hard stuff that leads its way to the good stuff. Again, dogs in life here. Isolating your specific problems. I had this conversation with a client yesterday that's finishing up a program. Young dog. Dog's doing fantastic. And they were like, how do we work on this stuff long term? How do we make sure we keep everything sharp and good and this and that? And I was having a conversation with them about how long term, even with my dogs, I'm constantly playing a game of what are my dog's weak spots right now, right? And that's what they're talking about here. Figure out the fears, the distractions, the certain behaviors that won't stop.
Yeah.
And I look at, can I just focus on and put the microscope on that thing for a little bit, right? In this dog's case, we took him out. We tried to wash through all of the obedience commands and behavioral things we had worked on. And we noticed that the downstay was just not quite as smooth as it needed to be. So I told him, I was like, listen, we've been working on this whole kind of conglomeration of things over the last 10 weeks here. Don't worry about all the good stuff, right? You don't have to practice all of the good stuff every time. You need to figure out what's its weak spot. In this case, it was the downstay. So we're going to spend the next week just working on that, right? And we're going to make sure that looks really, really good, right? Yeah. Another client I worked with recently, They're kind of doing a whole rehabilitation overhaul with their dogs. They've been having a lot of issues. They just started training, and they got a lot of behavioral issues they're working through in the house with the dogs, right? The wife just had a baby. She's overwhelmed by all of this kind of stuff. And I told him, I was like, listen, you can handle most of the obedience training and stuff for now. In her case, when she's home with these dogs, have her pick one singular thing, right?
Yeah.
Forget all the behavioral issues they have. One singular thing, barking out the window. And just tell her, just be 100% consistent about that one thing. And if you don't worry about anything else, if you could pick that one thing and not overwhelm yourself with it, but tackle it consistently and see the progress that you're going to see with that, you're going to be able to make a lot more progress than if you try to tackle all of those things at once. Because you're going to put the microscope on it, you're going to get it every single time, and you're going to see it go away significantly faster. And it's going to be more clear to the dog, right? So sometimes we need to do that, where we need to go in and we need to break down the stuff that actually needs the work and go for it. And the other point that he's trying to make with this is not avoiding the hard stuff, right?
Yeah.
If that thing that your dog struggles with and that weak point is walking at the park, right? You need to walk at the park a lot with your dog,
Yeah.
right? So don't skip the hard stuff just because you know it's going to be challenging for the dog. Do it more so that you can get past it faster.
Yeah. I think he does a good job here correlating it to like our actual lives.
Yes.
You know, and it makes it not seem that it's such a hard thing to do because it's challenges that you do in your own life. I mean, you just apply that to what you're doing with your dog.
Yeah. 100%.
So I think that was good wording.
100%.
It's just so awkward how he, like, this book is like broken up, but I like it.
I like it. It does get a little awkward sometimes. And like he does, like you could tell with some of these, like to try to get words in, there's a lot of repeated sentences.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that
Some
like
fluff.
kind of annoys me sometimes is like, yeah, like if you want to do this, if you want to do this, if you want to do this, if you want to
Yeah.
do this, like 14 times of that.
Yeah, it's
But the point is good, so we'll keep it going.
it's very motivational background here.
Little quote: the consequence that's valuable is the one your dog decides is valuable, not you. That's big. That's
a big
big.
one.
I use the example all the time. Do you remember Jack and Oreo from Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pit bull,
Yep.
little Boston
Little-
Terrier,
yep.
little thing. So Oreo, little Boston Terrier. This is to this point, right? Oreo, I don't remember if it was the owner or the trainer or what, but they'd done some training with this dog, and they really wanted to use the vibrate function on the e-collar, right?
Okay.
Vibrate function on the e-collar. They used it all the time. Because in everybody's head, vibrate. It's nothing. It's just a vibration.
Yeah.
Why would the dog ever be averse or scared of that? And I want to use that over the stimulation. Whatever. They fucking traumatized this dog with the vibrate
Yep.
function on that e-collar. For whatever reason, the dog decided the vibrate was valuable.
Yeah.
The dog decided that was extremely aversive, right? When in actuality, when we started switching to just using the stim for the corrections with it, we saw him respond so much less dramatically to it because we were able to be more adjustable with it. It was something that he understood better. Same with a pet corrector, right? A lot of people compressed air. Can we just use that? That sounds nice, right? I've seen some dogs that the pet corrector is literally the end of the world to them,
Yeah.
you know? And, we got to look at what does the dog actually care about, not what we think is valuable. You know, there are some dogs that are terrified of vacuum cleaners. And I kind of asked the owner, I was like, okay, cool. That dog that's traumatized of the vacuum cleaner, do you think that they would rather sit in a room with that vacuum cleaner on for 10 minutes or sit there and get corrected on a high level with an e-collar for like 10 minutes? And honestly, probably most of them would be much less averse by the e-collar than the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah,
you know, fear is a powerful thing, especially irrational fears with dogs. You know,
Yeah. I mean,
you say something, yeah.
I was just going to say that it ties exactly to what we were talking about with Tom and Kay. Like, your dog figures out what is motivating, you know? Like,
Reinforcement or either way,
Either
positive
way.
or negative.
Yeah. Like, your dog is a being of its own.
Yeah.
And just like you, What's motivating to you?
I was talking about it yesterday. The same client I was talking to about the long-term maintenance of their dog. The wife is really into like backpacking, right?
Oh, okay.
And she backpacks in Southern Ohio all the time. We were talking about it, and she was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Southern Ohio is weird." She's like, "It's muggy. It gets humid." She's like, "There's a lot of snakes," and I was just like. Snakes?
Yeah.
You said snakes? And literally, she started talking about how, like, when she would go backpacking out there at night, they had to be careful and make sure, like, their tent was fully zipped up because when it got cold, the snakes would try to crawl into the tent. Dude, I'm literally right now getting goosebumps even just saying it again.
Yeah.
She was telling me that story, and I didn't even want to hear it anymore. Like, I was getting so averse by her talking about that and even envisioning it in my head because I perceive that as extremely aversive. Right?
Not a snake guy, huh?
No. Get those snakes the fuck out of here. I will take any ginormous dog trying to maul my face off over a snake crawling into my tent any day.
Oh, man.
And I'm sure there's people out there that think the same. So again, like you were saying, everybody's a being. Everybody decides what is valuable.
Yep.
Keep that in mind. All right, the $5 speeding ticket. Ooh. How much impact would a $5 speeding ticket have on you? Probably not much. Would it change your love of speed? The need to get across town just a shade faster because you're late? Your impatient nature? Nah, $5 is just a nice latte. That's funny. If the consequence for speeding is so tiny, speeding looks awfully good, whatever the reason. Now let's have some fun. Imagine the standard speeding ticket was $5,000. No matter what the reason or how little you happen to be creeping over the limit, how might that affect your driving habits? I'd guess a whole lot. Even if you really like the adrenaline rush of a little heavy footing, even if you were late for a really important appointment, even if you were a really impatient type, I'd bet you'd make some very different decisions.
I mean, interesting scenario, but I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
Everybody would be on time.
It's true. I think, or everybody would just be late.
Or everyone would be late, yes.
No, I think it's an interesting point. You know, I find people, it's a much more dangerous trap to fall into the trap of underwhelming your dog with your corrections than overwhelming your dog with your corrections. I think the fallout for underwhelming them is potentially more than overwhelming them, because here's the thing. Mm-hmm. If you are correcting your dog at low levels on the e-collar or levels you perceive as motivating but really aren't, and you nag your dog, you start to kind of habituate them to that sensation over time, and they blow it off, and you wind up needing much higher levels later on. Where if you just start out at those high corrections, like we talked about in the first scenario with the dogs, of the dramatic dogs, and just kind of going right up into it at the higher levels, I think a lot of times you get a much quicker response if you're consistent about things. Now, you run the risk, obviously, of saying, okay, cool, if we're going to jump right into $1 million speeding ticket here, you know, the fallouts of if that happens one time, you know, are much higher, obviously, you know. You're going to care more about it, but you hit a point where you start completely shutting a person or a dog down in that point. But you have to figure out how to find that sweet spot when you're giving corrections for things, of being motivating enough, erring on the side of being a little more motivating than you need to, but not having it be just completely unfair as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you need it to be valuable, but not too valuable, but not valueless.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it's a hard one, you know, and you know, that's what I always say, you know, start high, right? And then little by little you could back off as you need to, right? Or constantly make adjustments based on the dog. But if you're noticing, you know, and this is the benefit of isolating things, right? If we're isolating working a downstair, isolating jumping on people, you're going to see very quickly if what you're doing is working, right?
Yeah.
Have you corrected 50 times for the same thing over and over again? Then you could clearly tell yourself this isn't working and I'm not being motivating enough.
Yeah.
Right? Are you correcting once or twice and it's going away completely? Perfect. Then you're probably in the right range. Mm-hmm. So you got to make those adjustments. All right. When consequences become significant, behavior changes for all of us. So same reasons and attractions, but totally different reactions. What changed? Just the momentary consequence and the awareness of what the consequence might mean to you. $5,000 is a lot of dough. In Dogland, I see the $5 speeding ticket issued, a bunch. And guess what goes along with that? Yep, not much. Owners might try to override chasing a squirrel with a stern yell, jumping by ignoring, pulling by standing still, or counter-surfing by grabbing the dog's collar, having a firm conversation about the dangers involved with scarfing unauthorized goodies. They're unaware that you're underwhelming the dog. The rewards simply outweigh the consequences, and when that's the case, the rewards are most valuable. According to your dog, not you. Get picked every time. Doing the wrong thing is supposed to be uncomfortable. The whole point of a speeding ticket is the discomfort. The discomfort or awareness of its possibility is what changes our behavior. And it's the same for our dogs. Consequences, both positive and negative, drive all our behavior. If they're meaningless, you can count on whatever behavior you're trying to stop to continue. So continuation of that, one big thing he pointed out here is, again, competing motivators, right? So keep in mind with your consequence as well, the consequence needs to match the motivation of whatever the dog is doing. How much does your dog like to chase squirrels? How much does your dog like to jump on people? How much does your dog like to pull on a leash? How much does your dog like to counter surf and grab good, delicious things off of the counter? And depending on how motivated your dog is by those individual things, you have to increase or decrease that consequence as needed, right? Blurred lines. Ooh. So how come things have gotten so much more dicey with our dogs? How come there seems to be far more ill-behaved dogs than the good old days? How come there's so much aggression, resource guarding, possessiveness, separation anxiety, reactivity, and so on? Am I just out of touch and remembering romantically those past days when dogs seemed to be dogs and humans seemed to be humans, and both seemed to be better for it? I'm not so sure. I'm 48. I was born in the late 60s. I remember very clearly the way our dogs lived with us, and the way most of my friends' dogs did as well. Our dogs were far from perfect, but I don't remember hearing much about many of the above issues. There was dog world and human world. But boy, things have changed. These days, most dogs live inside. They share our personal and intimate space freely. But that's not all that's changed. Along with the physical access, they're also moved inside our hearts and minds in a way that typically didn't exist previously. Not that previous generations didn't love their dogs. I'm sure they did. But the role our dogs play in our emotional lives today seems much different than that of the past. This has created a lot of negative fallout for our dogs, and for us who share our lives with them. Now, I love having my dogs inside. I'd hate to live with my crew outside. My guys are allowed on furniture, sleep on my bed, and roam the house pretty much as they please. We share the space. My guys are also very important to me emotionally. They're still dogs, but they hold a special place in my heart. I think that's pretty clear to them. So this begs the question, with this new dynamic of near total integration and sharing, how the heck do you keep your dogs balanced, respectful, polite, and well-behaved in the face of all these mixed messages? My feeling is this. Once we took our dogs inside, once we made them our daily physical and emotional companions, it changed what was required of us. Our parents, or maybe you, if you're of that older generation, could probably get away with not doing as much training. They likely didn't need to create a ton of structure, hone their leadership skills, or use the same tools and strategies to keep their dogs balanced. Their dogs were dogs. But for us, with these blurred lines, we've got a different reality. Because we've shifted our dogs' perception of us, because we've integrated them so deeply into our lives, because we've leaned so hard on them emotionally, many becoming surrogate children, spouses, or friends, we've got a whole different reality. A reality where we have to work a heck of a lot harder to keep them balanced. Once we bring them into our world in this more intimate fashion, things changed. Our jobs as dog owners got harder, more complex. Our responsibilities, if we were to have healthy, balanced dogs, got heavier and more challenging. The upshot is we fundamentally changed how we live and interact with our dogs. There's no getting around it, and I don't think it's changing anytime soon. Our dogs have become central players in our lives, family members we cherish and adore, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, if we're prepared to do the hard work that comes with that. With this new way of living comes greater challenges. The possibility of neurotic behavior, feelings of entitlement, boundary pushing, disrespect, and lots more. For me, the answer was to make sure that as deep as I loved and as much freedom I granted, that I shared equally firm, unquestionable discipline. While my guys know I love them deeply, they also know that any monkey business is met with firm, immediate, and valuable consequences. That balance of love and leadership is what allows me to have the best of both worlds. It's work my folks and friends likely never had to do, at least not at this level. For the most part, they choose to have their dogs be dogs, and that meant an easier human-dog lifestyle path in many ways. But that might also have meant the absence of intimate dog companionship, perhaps lonely outdoor lives for many dogs. So there are trade-offs in both. But for those of us choosing to live in the more integrated fashion, remember that freedom, connection, and enjoyment comes at a cost. If we want to have happy, healthy dogs, we can enjoy. And that cost is more awareness, more responsibility, more effort, and the willingness to share as much discipline as we share love. With great power comes great responsibility.
I knew you were going to say that. I just knew it.
What do you think?
I mean, I think we kind of touched on this a few times throughout our podcasts, where it's kind of over-humanizing your animals.
Mm-hmm. And the conversation we talked about how, I don't think we're getting away from that necessarily.
True.
I think that's kind of the life we live at this point, right? We've shifted, like you said, to living this integrated life where we take our dogs everywhere and we do all of these things and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I don't necessarily think that the discipline itself is the key or the consequences themselves are the key. I think it's just the boundaries that we set, right? And making sure we're consistent about those boundaries in general. Right?
Yeah.
You could be as firm as you want, right? You could correct for things all you want. But if your boundaries are not clear to your dog and you don't have a clear expectation and understanding of your dog, which I think is important because all dogs are very, very different on a temperamental level, I think that you're still going to lose that fight. And that's something we strive to teach our clients is as an individual, what does this dog need? And what is this dog going to be like for you? And what sorts of things do you need to do with them in order to keep them balanced? All right, moving on here. What happens when your doctor tells you your cholesterol is dangerously high? What happens when your spouse threatens to leave because of your behavior? What happens when your accountant tells you you've spent far more than you've earned? Man, dangerous situations.
Yes.
You. Well, if any of the above matters to you. Oh, no, this one's titled You, Your Dog, and Consequences. Well, if any of the above matter to you, several things should happen. 1, it should create some fear. Which happens if I don't change this? 2, it should create some serious contemplation. How can I avoid this in the future? 3, it should create some new decisions. I'll do this new thing instead and bypass the bad stuff. All of the above serve a valuable purpose. They're reminders about impending consequences if behavior doesn't change. Gifts that help you get back on the right path. And it's the same for your dogs, except you're the one issuing the warnings. You're the one helping your dogs steer through this crazy world as safely and comfortably as possible. The context will be different. Your dog won't be getting into the same pickles as you, but the outcomes can be just as dire, if not worse. Dogs get hit by cars, return to shelters for jumping, barking destruction, die from obstructions, and are often just major stressors for their owners. It's your job to make sure they stay safe, fit into human life, and have the simple clarity of what's right and wrong. But in our current dog training owner culture, consequences, also known as information or feedback, have become something only the mean or uninformed share with their dog. If utilized, these nasty things will crush your dog's spirit and damage your relationship. So rather than that, it's recommended that you ignore the bad and reward the good. But what if life treated you the same way? What if your doctor ignored your cholesterol count but said, nice work, you lost a pound? What if your spouse ignored your inability to manage your anger issues but said, you were lovely tonight? When you didn't explode for a change? What if your accountant ignored your spending issues but said, nice work on only spending $5,000 over your budget rather than usual $10,000? That's a good paragraph right there. I never really thought about it that way. That's a good analogy of positive-only training.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea of positive-only training is that rewarding for the incremental positive things that you like will eliminate the bad behaviors, and not rewarding for the bad behaviors or removing reward from the bad behaviors will make them go away as well. And it doesn't work that way. Honestly, it's a really good point. If you were never rationalized about why something was so bad, which you can't do with a dog, you can only tell them that through consequences, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that conversation, obviously.
Yep.
And you just say, great work. You didn't run into the street today. Great work. You didn't eat that rock on the ground over there. That could kill you.
Yeah.
great work. You didn't, I don't know, whatever other numerous thing the dog does. You realize how bad of a trap that is.
Yeah.
That's a great paragraph right there. What would happen is you'd be robbed of essential information and feedback, stuff you desperately need to better navigate life. Consequences are there to help you understand something needs to change, that something is putting you in danger, that something isn't in your best interests. They're not mean or nasty. They're just reality. They're just life. And without them, you're basically flying blind. And so, in an interest to be kinder to our dogs, to ensure that they don't experience undue stress or unhappiness, that learning stuff, we shelter them from clarity. We shield them from the truth. We give them just a teeny piece of the life puzzle and ask them to figure out the rest. We make their lives infinitely harder, more stressful, and more dangerous. How strange that this new, enlightened approach to kindness and love actually ends up being the harshest treatment of all.
Man. Those are good paragraphs, all of them. All those last 3 or 4.
Order in the court.
Ooh.
What keeps the peace? What prevents bad choices? What causes all of us to do our best work, play by the rules, and honor the rules of society? Consequences. The understanding that valuable, significant, and unsavory consequences will be delivered for making unsavory and unacceptable choices. It's the same for our dogs as it for us. We all want to make it more complicated, but behavior is always controlled by consequences. Once the rules, the structure, and the framework of expectations are fairly taught and shared, then it's up to the consequences to ensure they're adhered to. Miss this aspect and you'll find yourself and your dog in trouble. Keep it simple, keep it honest, keep it effective. I've had my Tibetan Mastiff since he was a puppy at 12 weeks old. This is a client excerpt here. I've never had this breed before, but read up quite a bit on it. Knowing after what I had read, I knew he had to go to training immediately. We bonded immediately, and I got to work socializing him with everybody and everything. It didn't work. I put him into what I thought was the best training at the time for 2 weeks, mainly for his aggression at such a young age, but didn't really work out. He learned the basics: come, sit, how to walk on a leash, but the aggression was still there. Gus was unpredictable. Friendly 1 minute, then he would turn only on certain people. Not all the time, not all people. For no reason, he would just go after somebody. After 3 more years and a few incidents with his aggression, now a full-grown adult 130-pound dog, I searched for another trainer. I spoke with the owner and told him about my situation, and he assured me he could help. I scheduled another board and train at the facility 6 months in advance and had several conversations with the owner before our arrival date. Long story short, the owner called me after just 2 hours to come pick up my dog. They couldn't even get him out of the crate, not due to his aggression, but his separation anxiety. They told me he may have a heart attack, it was so bad. I did stay and did daily training for 2 weeks, but did not solve his aggression issues. I was about to give up. At one time, thought about putting my beautiful boy down. Then I came across a video on Facebook. It was the Good Dog Training video with Sean and his staff. I immediately called and spoke with Laura. Once again, I was assured they could help. What did I have to lose, except for my dog? I took the chance and scheduled a board and train. They discussed the method of training, e-collar, and I was immediately on board with it. After the initial meet and greet, I had high hopes for my dog Gus. I myself had a lot of homework to do. This was our last chance, and prayed this training would help. Gus is very stubborn, very strong-willed, and independent, and it took some time to get through to him, but eventually Sean and his wonderful staff did. He responds to me, obeys me, and although his aggression is still there, they taught me how to deal with it in a more manageable way. That's an important paragraph we'll talk about in a second here. It is my job to protect him as he protects me, meaning not to put him in unsafe situations. He is a one-person dog. I don't need people to accept him or love on him. He doesn't need playmates. He is now controlled with an e-collar. We are able to walk together. He runs free on our ranch. He comes when he's called. He places when he is supposed to, and it seems he is a much happier dog trying to please me with our daily exercises. There is structure in our lives now. Sean and his staff at the Good Dog Training literally saved our lives, both Gus and mine. He is part of the family, and it would be devastating if I had to put him down. Just a note, I've had many big dogs in the past, a wolf hybrid for 14 years, many German Shepherds, and even a pit bull. This breed, however, is more difficult than those breeds. Very headstrong, overprotective, unpredictable, and aloof. Thank you, TGD. I am forever grateful for the training for both him and me for not giving up on us. Keep up the amazing work. Okay, this is important. Now, this sounds like this really great success story, right? Which it is. Now, why is it successful?
Because they knew that there's no cure to the aggression. They're just managing it. Is that right?
Yes. Right. So the importance and the important things people need to take away with this is not that the problems were fixed.
Yes.
Right. And this is where some of my issues I've had with Sean in the past have come down to his advertisements being that we can fix these issues. Even some of the paragraphs we talked about in the last couple passages here, right?
Yep.
The consequences, as long as you provide these things, as long as you correct the aggressive displays, he's talked about correcting aggression a lot of times in this, it goes away, right? It stops. That's not real life.
No.
Right? Aggressive dogs will always be aggressive dogs, right? The success, and in this case, Gus's success, lies from his owner understanding that more deeply and having a better means of communicating with him to manage him so that he's not put in difficult situations, right? And that is the key when you're working with aggressive dogs. And that is the key for everybody to understand when they have a dog that is like that. You won't fix it. You will learn to manage it and understand it better. And here's the thing. There are some people that are up for that, and there are some people that are not up for that. That's a whole nother conversation we'll get into another time. But there are some people that are not up for or did not sign up for having a dog like that.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? But you have to understand those things. All right.
Yeah. Don't overblow your expectations.
Don't do it. All right. Let's do one or two more.
Okay.
All right. The Lord of the Flies principle. If you have a multi-dog household and are experiencing tension, squabbles, or all-out fights, the reason is almost always a lack of leadership, structure, and rules. If this gap that creates the opportunity for chaos. When dogs don't have a strong pack structure in their house, meaning they're not 100% sure who's in charge, what's allowed and not allowed, and that someone will effectively enforce the rules, they can quickly become stressed, anxious, pushy, bratty, possessive, worried, fearful, and opportunistic. As you can imagine, dogs cohabitating in this fashion are going to be ripe for trouble and fighting. If you've ever read The Lord of the Flies, I know this is going back a ways. You've got a great example of the psychological and behavioral breakdown that occurs when structure, rules, and authority are absent. Just replace all the kids in the story with your dogs. For people that are not familiar with that book, basically a bunch of kids are stranded on an island. There's no adults there, and the kids develop their own hierarchy organically, and it turns into chaos.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
It's a good book. So that's basically it. And it's a great point, right? If nobody is in charge and you got 6 dogs in the house, 3 dogs in the house, 2 dogs in the house, they are going to start to create the leadership, and they can't rationalize with words. So that comes down to all sorts of problems amongst the dogs as well as you in the house. When structure, rules, and authority are absent, stress, anxiety, and fear start to manifest. Why? Because of survival instincts. Social creatures understand that the absence of structure, rules, and authority mean danger, risk, and fear, and that puts everyone on edge. Once that gap is created, safety becomes questionable, behavior erratic, anything can happen, stress soars, and when that's a pervasive feeling, everybody starts to look out for their best interests, regardless of how it affects others. That could be resource guarding amongst dogs. That could be competing over attention. That could be anything. Personality traits that might have remained managed or suppressed in the presence of authority begin to surface when that authority pressure is removed. Instead of dogs doing their best, we see them offering their worst. And that goes down to behavioral issues typically being relationship problems. That's why we see dogs respond differently with different people, is because they have that perceived authority present, right? Once that goes away, the dogs fall back into those routines. And that's, again, you don't fix problems. You learn how to better understand your dog and better communicate with them so that you can coach them through these scenarios. And hopefully in the long run, you create muscle memory of a lot of these more minor things where if you're there or not, they're not going to get into the trash can. They're not going to jump on people, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the big picture stuff, right? Short picture or short term, we have to develop that by making sure we're present to address these things as they happen, to develop that muscle memory. Remember the end of the story? When the boys were finally rescued, they immediately reverted back to their normal, courteous, polite, thoughtful, and civilized selves. Why? Because they had to, and also because they wanted to. Instead of simply being upset, annoyed, frazzled, or frustrated with your dog's behavior, ask yourself if there's a gift for yourself in the problem. Oh, it's a different one. This is the gift. Are your dog's issues offering you an opportunity to challenge yourself to grow, to become more confident, more emotionally balanced, less anxious, less in a hurry, more apt to look for answers than anger? Are your dog's issues exposing issues for yourself that need work? It's a rare appointment in which the dog I'm working with isn't reacting to some degree to the human's issues and or wouldn't benefit from the human growing, challenging, progressing, developing themselves into more fully balanced, healthy versions of themselves. If you only look for the problem your dog is offering, that is all you'll find. But you'll take a deeper, more honest and vulnerable look. You'll find the gift he is offering as well. When it comes to our dogs, we always have a choice. The choice to see problems or see opportunities.
Ooh.
That's a good one. A lot of people say, you get the dog you want, you get the dog you need, not the dog you want. And I think that there is some truth to that. I look at myself. I am a very, very impatient, quick-acting, frantic person. And when I got a dog that was exactly that as well, Vinny,
Yep.
there was a lot of headbutting initially.
Yeah.
There were times I remember training him where I would get so fucking angry and pissed off for no reason because something wasn't clear. I just like feel myself just, oh God, just getting so angry with him over things, right? And it was because we were feeding off of each other with that kind of stuff. And it created a lot of problems in our training when I first got him. And it wasn't until I learned who he was and I learned who I needed to be to help him through that. And in that case, it was more calm, more work through stress in a more manageable way.
Yeah. Learn
to compose myself around conflict and stuff. It was all of those different types of things that I started to see him relax as well, right? It forced me to change into a more patient person, a more balanced person.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been able to live such a better life with him. And he's been able to live such a better life in general is because of that. And I do challenge everybody to look at that, especially when you look at a lot of these anxious dogs or fearful dogs and stuff or high-strung dogs. 90% of the time, it's because the owner is exhibiting that type of behavior as well. And it does start with looking internally and starting to work through those things as well if you're going to get the kind of success that you want, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at trainers and their relationship with their dogs and they want that so bad, but most of them don't realize all of the little things it takes in order to get there. And I think that this is doing a good job of highlighting it. I like I said, I like this book. I like how we're kind of getting through it.
Yeah. I mean, that we've kind of talked about this a little bit too, but how much your dog really gets from you. Just even, when we're talking about on the walk, if you're a fearful person, you're literally communicating that through your leash to your dog.
Big time.
And I mean, they're around you 24/7 basically because they're your dog. So what are they going to pick up? They're going to pick up everything that you're putting down.
100%.
Picking up what you're putting down.
I'm picking it up. Hell yeah. All right. Shorter one today. We're going to end that on that. We'll have another one for you guys on Thursday to make up for last week. But, yeah, it's good.
It was a good one.
It was good.
We still had good points, everything. I know we always say the random podcast, but
everyone's the random. Everyone will be the random. This is the David the Random Pod. David the Dog Trainer Random Podcast. This is the new name of it.
Yeah. Still, man. Good points.
Anything to add, Josh?
No, I liked it. It was good. I especially like that we talked about everything that happened to platform because that's a big thing that we need to talk about right now.
Just don't pet dogs that aren't yours, guys. Please, if you see a dog out and about, leave it alone.
Yes.
Just leave it alone.
It's not yours.
It's not your dog. You don't need to go up and interact with every dog you see.
No.
So.
But yeah.
All right, guys. Doobie, where are they going to find you?
Josh Dobay Productions, joshdobayproductions.com.
You can find us at Miracle Canine Training on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, miraclecanintraining.com to learn about our services. My personal page at Davidthedogtrainer on Instagram. Yeah. We got some new T-shirts coming out here soon.
Tropical vibes.
We got tropical vibes, island vibes, Miracle Canine shirts. We'll be posting links to purchase those as soon as we get them the next couple of weeks. Get your summer gear ready. And we might come out with a podcast T-shirt.
Why not?
Might do it.
Let's do it.
Fuck it.
Yeah. I guess I want to add to YouTube's been growing really well, so thank you guys for that. If you could just, yet again, I'm going to shout out just as if you could like, comment, subscribe, anything, because, I mean, not only do we answer questions from the Instagram, but we answer every question that's on the YouTube comment section too. So
get at them.
Yep.
All right, guys. We'll catch you Thursday.